What's up, Barnhill family, and welcome back to your home for all things combat sports.
Yo.
Well, guys, and still, El Matador, UFC 308 just wrapped. We're going to break down the main event, what Ilia did to make history in becoming the first man to ever finish Max Holloway inside of the UFC's octagon. We're going to talk Khamzat Chimaev's flawless performance against Robert Whittaker and that great and just devastating choke finish. We're going to talk Magomed Ankalaev. Did his performance catapult him into a title shot against Alex Pereira next? We're going to discuss whether or not Dan Ige was robbed against Lerone Murphy. And of course, that incredible double backfist finish from Sharabutdin. But Nick, I think we have to start right at the top.
Yep.
I mean, history was made tonight. Max Holloway was the guy up until tonight who you just couldn't finish inside of the octagon.
Right.
He had the chin of all chins. He was as game as they come, and he's famous for pointing in the center of the octagon in the last handful of seconds of a fight. And generally, as we saw against Justin Gaethje, come out with his hand raised, and in that instance with his opponent face down on the canvas. Now, Ilia kind of flipped the script on him.
Yep.
He pointed to the canvas himself, and Max, immediately was a showman and gave him the El Matador, sort of toss. It was interesting, kind of fun exchange in the beginning there, but ultimately it was the clean boxing of Ilia Topuria and that just signature and patented now power that he brings to the game. And for a guy whose stature at 145 is not on the large end of the weight class, this guy packs a punch that isn't just something that you need to be, aware of as an opponent. It's honestly something you need to fear, because this guy's power is otherworldly. And we see him get it done with those short shots, very close range, as he did with Max Holloway. It was sort of an overhand hook type of shot that got Max down and finished the deal. But he sets everything up with just beautiful feint and footwork. His jab is superb, and that's what he uses to get inside. What did you see out of El Matador's performance? And I want to talk about what's next for him, because I don't know, after watching that tonight, that there's anybody at 145 right now currently that can challenge the champion.
Yeah, well, before we get into what's next for him, I think after tonight, he left a very big gap between him and the rest of the division. I'm honestly more interested in seeing him do some things at 155 now, potentially even a fight with Islam Makhachev. So technical, so powerful, and most of the time when you see these power punchers, they're very good at finding their targets, but usually their technique isn't quite up to snuff with some of these elite level technicians like a Max Holloway. I think Ilia Topuria is not only the heaviest puncher and the biggest power striker in the division, but I also think he's the most technical, most buttoned up defensively striker that we've seen in quite a long time. Max Holloway gets a lot of credit for being the best boxer in the UFC, but we just saw him get boxed up. I mean, I know this was a mixed martial arts fight. The range is different than boxing and everything, and they're really just kind of making a cool headline when they say the best boxer in the UFC. But when you talk about boxing for MMA, what Ilia is doing is nothing short of spectacular. The way he's able to stay right in range, stay right in front of you, 9 times out of 10, he's the shorter opponent, and he's able to cut range. He's able to completely shut down all angles that his opponent wants to try to escape from. We never see Max Holloway kept up against the cage, and a couple of times the pressure that Ilia was bringing forced Max up against the cage, and I believe the fact that Max had to fight moving backwards so much during this fight was the reason he was a little gun shy, a little bit slow to pull the trigger on some of his shots. All of that was just the accumulation of Ilia Topuria, his presence being felt, his power being respected, and like you said, not just respected but feared. Everybody fears this. Everybody fears this guy's power. He hits like a truck, and the way he's able to get inside and find his shots, he's not throwing all these crazy shots at you. Think of like a Sugar Sean, who's a brilliant striker in his own right. He throws all sorts of variety at you. Ilia's not doing that. He's throwing some really good long 1s and 2s and a couple of calf kicks to start the fight going. Once he gets in range, then it turns into hooks, uppercuts, overhands, and that's where his real power is. I think the way he's able to implement his game plan, find his targets, and do come out on top with performances like that is he's got superstar written all over him. Spain's never had a real world champion in the UFC like this. I feel like the entire country's behind him. Europe is quickly, following suit. He's got the love from the Georgian fans. He seems to be an international star, and I think after beating a guy like Max Holloway, who is on everybody's favorite fighter list, it's only going to cement him more into the 145 division as a top dog. And look, there's really great eras in mixed martial arts in all the divisions. 145 is rich with great eras. But I would say right now, when you've got Ilia Topuria, Max Holloway, and Volkanovski all there, all three now champions or former champions, they're sitting in the division right now. So I think 145 is as good and competitive as it's ever been, but Ilia Topuria sits on top. And like you said, I don't think anybody at 45 really has much for him. I think we need to start looking at 55.
Yeah, I mean, and I think what really brings about greatness and launches somebody into that superstar sort of status is when they do the things that haven't been done before. So think of Conor McGregor, when he was picking the round and then actually executing on the rounds that he was picking to finish his opponents. Think about Jose Aldo, was the most feared guy at 145. Conor knocked him out in 13 seconds. Now kind of transpose that sort of uniqueness to Ilia Topuria. Max Holloway had never been finished. We just saw him go up to 155 in a fight that a lot of people thought he wasn't going to have the firepower to handle against the Justin Gaethje. And not only did he piece Justin up, he finished him at the end in one of the most spectacular ways imaginable. Max Holloway's the guy that not only doesn't get finished, but doesn't even get sat down on the canvas. So when you have that opportunity to get in there against a legend, against another great who also has this stigma around them that they cannot be finished in a fight no matter what, and you're the first guy not only to do it, but to say you're going to do it, be as confident as you are, and then go out there and do it. That's what stars are made of, and Ilia Topuria is quickly becoming one, and he has the skills to match it up. One thing that stuck out to me was how easy he got that takedown in the first round. And, Ilia, before his UFC career, he was submitting everybody, and that was when I first heard about him and he came into the UFC, I said, man, this guy's going to be a problem. He's a really good grappler. He's going to get a lot of submission wins. And then he starts just knocking people's lights out.
Devastatingly.
And so you think about the fact of how complete he is, and as well compare that to how young he is. He's only 27 years of age, and he's already defeated this calendar year two of the best 145ers, if not the two best 140. If you don't have Max and Volk, you have Jose Aldo in there somewhere. If you're a massive Conor fan, maybe you have him in there. But most people have Volk and Max as your 1 and 2. And he's knocked them both out this calendar year. The sky's the limit for this young man, and his technical boxing was just a thing of beauty. One thing I want to talk about is his feints. The way that he was moving his head back and forth. He's very patient. He's very economical. I think he only lands like 4 significant strikes per minute, which is not a lot, but when you have the type of power he does, you can overwhelm people with 4 strikes. Because if you're getting hit with 4 of those per minute over a 5-minute round, that's 20 massive strikes from Ilia Topuria. Not many people can stand 2, 3, 4 rounds of that, and he's getting people out of there, and he's getting them out of there early. But the feinting was a thing of beauty. How he just moves back and forth. He uses his head slips as a feint. It's almost like a little level change. He'll get heavy on that front leg and kind of squat down, and then he comes right back up with a jab. His jabs were very well timed. They weren't telegraphed. He threw them, he would slip to the left and throw it, and then he'll be square with you and throw it, and he sets that up to get inside because that's where his power comes from, are those inside hooks, overhands, and uppercuts. And he gets, and if you have a real advantage over somebody in a particular area of the fight, which Ilia has against almost everybody, and Max included, from close range boxing, you have to figure out a way creatively to get yourself to those positions because clearly Max Holloway is a veteran. He knows where Ilia Topuria is going to shine. He knows where he has the disadvantage. So he's going to be trying to stop Ilia from getting to the place that he wants to get to. But Ilia just got there with ease. And then the effortlessness with which he took Max down shows me that if he wanted to grapple, he could have done that as well. So then you start to think about Diego Lopez, Movsar Evrolev, and people like that have real high-level grappling, but don't have near the striking prowess as Topuria. But then you think, man, Topuria can match or better them in the grappling department, and they don't stand a chance on the feet. Now, Diego Lopez is really exciting, really powerful. He's one of my favorite fighters to watch right now, but he's very loose. He's wide open, and Ilia is very disciplined. And a lot of times when you have somebody that powerful and that disciplined, they can expose the person who's, a little bit more wild. And so I personally have Ilia winning against anybody that they put up against him at 145 right now. Yeah. I picked him to win this fight against Max, who's one of my favorite fighters of all time. So, it's a tough pill to swallow for us Max fans to watch him get finished like that. But at the same time, it just makes me excited as an MMA fan as a whole, because I like the sport more than I like any one particular fighter.
Right.
And to see these young fighters at 27 years old look that good, it shows us that, like, man, the guys that we love, the guys that we grew up watching and we kind of cut our teeth in this sport becoming fans of, they're just not as good as this new generation. Yeah. And that's okay, because they had their moments, and we all want this sport to evolve.
And they set the stage for all these young guys.
Right. These young guys watch them, they learned, and they have taken it now to another level. And I believe Ilia Topuria is leading the charge of the next level and the next generation of mixed martial arts.
Yeah, and he even said as much. He was like, dude, to share the octagon with Max Holloway and to be able to fight a guy like that, I looked up to him my whole life. You can't help it, but if you're a 145-pound fighter and your goal is to be a UFC champion, to become a major fan of Max Holloway and study everything he's doing, because what he was doing for so long worked so well. But yeah, I don't think Topuria is going to have any issues at 45 for a meaningful period of time. Quite honestly, if I look at the roster, I don't see anybody that gives him a lot of trouble. We're going to have to find somebody else to come into the division to really shake things up. So I think Topuria, as long as he wants to make 45, he's got a belt there. But I think his eyes are set on champ status. I think he is going to probably put his name into the 155 number one contender talks, and who knows where that will go. But I think sky's the limit for him. And one thing that stuck out to me the most, he made a huge risk at the very beginning of the fight. He called out the guy that calls people out when he says, point to the ground and let's duke it out. And the fact that Max Holloway didn't take the bait on that was a huge risk, because Max is willing to oblige most of the time, but he's not quite as technical, he's not quite as fast with his striking, and he's not quite as powerful as Ilia. So he knew it was not a smart decision to go in there and immediately start throwing with Ilia. But that was a huge risk, because Ilia could have very well found himself in the same position Justin Gaethje was in not that long ago, with Max Holloway throwing on top of the monster M. So I think that was really cool. It showed his level of confidence in his striking and his ability. He's like, look, if this is what he likes to do, let's do it, no problem. And I thought it was really cool that even though it didn't happen that way and we didn't get to see a 10-second brawl of them just throwing at each other in striking range, we did get to see him outstrike the striker. We saw him take him down, of course, that looked really good, but he knew, not only do I have an advantage on the ground, I have an advantage on the feet. I've got speed, I've got more power, and he's a little bit flat-footed. He's not hitting me with anything I'm super concerned about. That's what kept him in range so long. That's what opened up the body. That's what opened up the head, and ultimately got Max Holloway out of there. Ilia Topuria, it belongs in the pound-for-pound top 5, and I think if you put him up against Islam Makhachev, he probably does better than every other top contender 155er that they have today.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Would he beat Islam? I don't know. Islam's huge for 155. Ilia is not huge for 145. I'm not one to just say somebody should immediately jump up and go for champ status. I'd be satisfied with 2 more wins. Yeah. When you knock out Volk and Max in the same calendar year, let him fight Diego and Mavsar next year. And if he wants to go up after that, I'd be fine with it. When you put on the performances like he's putting on, you start to get certain things swinging in your favor, and I think that will happen for Ilia. Also, the calf kick, really, really good with his calf kick tonight. And I think that kind of, we see Max switch stances a lot. I would have liked to see a little bit more of that tonight. I think it would have been harder for Ilia to find the calf kick. Ultimately, I don't think it mattered.
No.
Ilia was just the better man. And want to quickly touch on Max before we move on to the co-main event and talk about Chimaev. What do you see next for Max Holloway? He's still the BMF champion.
Yeah.
He did drop one to Conor McGregor earlier in his career. He's got a belt that Conor would love to have. Conor's not sniffing an undisputed belt anytime in the reasonable future, or probably ever again. Right. So, Conor, knowing him and knowing the showman that he is, he's going to want something big on the line. I see McGregor kind of pining for that fight. There's Dustin Poirier out there wants one more, run
Dan
that
Hooker,
one. Yeah, Dan, there's a lot of fun things for Max, but I think more importantly, the three names that we just threw out there are all at 155 or higher. I think that Max's days at 145 are over, and quite frankly, they should be. Yeah. He clearly can't hold up as well with the weight cut anymore now in his early 30s.
Big.
To get to 145. He did look very big, and I think at 155 he's got better matchups and he's got a better chance of being able to be more durable.
Yeah, and I think that should be the last fight at 45 for Max. I think there's really fun fights and bigger names at 55 for him. Also, he's done everything at 45, and he finally got his last title shot there. He's not going to get another one. And now they're already looking at Volk fighting Ilia again. I feel like they might need new blood. They need some parity in the division. And I think the best thing Max Holloway could do is just put himself at 55, see what happens. Say, I'll defend my BMF, but I want to join the ranks of the 155ers. Y'all saw what I did to Justin Gaethje, so let me go where he was ranked or somewhere right around there, and I'll put my BMF on the line. That's where I think he should go. Volk, I think, should probably stick around 45 a little bit longer and hope that he can get another title shot with Ilia. Who knows how that would go? But if I'm Max, if we're touching on Max right now, to put a button on it, I would go to 155.
Agreed. And let's move on now to the co-main event. Khamzat Chimaev, Robert Whittaker. First, congratulations to you. I believe you predicted this one correctly. I got this one incorrect. I thought Bobby Knuckles, after that last performance over the summer with the great knockout victory, was going to get the nod. He had absolutely nothing for Khamzat Chimaev. Khamzat is a beast when it comes to wrestling, man. That guy... I tell you what, fighting in the Middle East brings something out of Khamzat Chimaev.
Yes.
This was like vintage 2020 Abu Dhabi Khamzat Chimaev.
That's what it felt like.
Run across the cage, take his opponent down, beat the snot out of him, transition beautifully. I mean, every which way Robert was turning to try to get out of that. He did a little bit better job than Kevin Holland did, but not by much. Yeah. And, ultimately, we saw the picture of Robert's teeth afterwards.
Yeah,
that face crank was brutal. I mean, what is that guy's grip strength like? It must just be absurd to knock his opponent's jaw out of place and basically break 3 of his teeth.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy is really something to behold as far as grappling is concerned. And then you look towards, so I want to touch on the fight first, but then when you look towards, what's next, you have DDP and Sean Strickland.
Yeah.
Very different matches. DDP is more likely the harder matchup because he's got good grappling and he's very strong. Sean brings a totally different thing to the octagon and really good boxing. But would Khamzat be able to just change levels and get around that? That's yet to be determined. But first of all, thoughts on the fight, and then what do you think is next for Boers?
Oh, I thought it was insane. That was the old Khamzat we were so used to. And yeah, I guess there is something magic in the air when he's out there fighting, and he's moved there. He considers it home now, and I guess he just feels very comfortable with the home court advantage and fighting in front of his home crowd. But yeah, to show no respect to a former champion like Robert Whittaker, especially after that last performance, and just walk over there, take no damage, 0 significant strikes landed, and go out there, completely control a great wrestler, a great jiu-jitsu fighter, a guy who knows how to grapple very well in mixed martial arts, make it look like it was his first day on the mats, essentially. Nothing short of spectacular. The control spoke volumes. I think that Khamzat Chimaev must be regarded as one of the best submission artists on the UFC's roster today. You don't see anybody going out there and submitting people with ease the way he does, especially not former world champions and really high-level fighters. I know he's had some tougher fights since he really came onto the scene. He came on, made everybody look like they didn't belong in the cage with him, and then he had a couple of competitive fights. This was a turn back to his old ways, and I think the Khamzat Chimaev we saw fight Robert Whittaker becomes the world champion. Historically, statistically, if you beat Robert Whittaker, you become the middleweight champion. I don't think anything's going to be different with history. I think Khamzat Chimaev becomes a world champion. Whether it's DDP or Strickland, I'm with you in agreeing that DDP would be a harder fight because his grappling's a little bit better, his takedown defense. And Strickland is a great volume puncher. He's not going to knock you out with one shot. And if you give Khamzat Chimaev 25 minutes to continue taking you down and continue working those angles and try to work his damage from the top, leading into those submissions, he's going to find his opportunities. And one beautiful thing, real quick, talking about the Robert Whittaker jaw thing. If you noticed, right before he sunk the choke in, he was throwing some elbows right there, kind of landing on the jawline of Robert Whittaker. Maybe that was what started it. Maybe he lodged it out of place, and then when he went to go choke him, it was really uncomfortable, or more uncomfortable even than a regular crank would be. But whatever he did, it caused some desperation taps very quickly out of Robert Whittaker, who's no quitter, who's a complete dog and warrior. But when you have a broken jaw, there's not much you can do. So I think Khamzat Chimaev, in my opinion, is the hottest commodity in the middleweight division. I think he still needs to be revered and seen as one of the most talented fighters on the entire roster. And I do think after this fight with Robert Whittaker, he needs to do nothing else other than wait for a title fight. We'll see what happens with DDP and Sean Strickland, but the UFC knows what they have with Khamzat Chimaev. He's an international star. People really want to see him fight. They want to see him active. And I think the UFC would benefit with having a belt around his waist. They're not going to give it to him. It's not an easy fight either way he goes, but I think he would be the favorite and probably would get his hand raised regardless of who's in the title fight with him, DDP or Sean Strickland.
Yeah, my money's on them making DDP in January, DDP versus Sean in January or February of next year. We know Khamzat won't fight during Ramadan, which would line up an a late spring, early summer comeback for him against the winner of that fight. And I would pick Khamzat to win against either one of those fighters. I think the DDP fight is a harder fight stylistically, but I think Khamzat is showing us that he's back to his old ways and even better than before. You know, he realized that you don't have to train 17 times a day, 7 days a week and not sleep and all. Like, eventually you get to the point where you have the skills. You also have to give your body that other element, which is allowing it to rest, to recover properly. He brought a new nutritionist in for this camp. He did a lot of it back in Europe, and he's training with some of the old training partners that he was with. He took an ample amount of time in between training sessions to rest. This is what we need out of him. Khamzat is his own, or was his own worst enemy for the last few years because he was overtraining. He was always finding himself sick. He was always pulling out of fights, and that was what really got people to kind of jump off of the hype train. But he doesn't need to train multiple times a day to be able to do what he did to Robert Whittaker. That wrestling skill is ingrained in him. Now, of course, when you sign on the dotted line for a fight, you go into an 8 to 12 week fight camp. You're training 6 days a week, 7 days a week potentially, but you need to do it in a smart way. And if Khamzat does that, I think if he gets out of his own way and gets out of his own head, he's a future champion. And I think it's going to be a really hard proposition for anybody at 185 to beat him if he gets the belt looking the way he looked tonight against Robert Whittaker.
100%. And I hope he stays at 185. I hope he gets his title shot next. I think he deserves it. One hot take I will give you real quick is Alex Pereira is one of the hottest, maybe the hottest active fighter on the roster. Khamzat Chimaev is in that same discussion, probably in the top 10 of the hottest names on the roster now. Stylistically, DDP is a harder matchup for Khamzat Chimaev than Alex Pereira. I believe if Alex Pereira somehow got in a fight with Khamzat Chimaev and was defending his 205 belt, even with the striking, even with the size advantage, he would be able to find that submission. That's how special this guy is. I don't think that the size would be a difference maker in that situation. And I honestly, I think Khamzat Chimaev is game for that sort of stuff. And especially if you think you have a better chance at winning a belt against a guy in a different division, if the UFC is willing to scratch your back a little bit because you do some good stuff for them, maybe they'll see something like that happen. Ankalaev just got a decision win. I think if he would have got a statement victory over Rakic, maybe he would be for sure next in line. But given his past with the UFC, maybe they want to throw somebody else in. If Khamzat doesn't want to wait for another whole year, he didn't take any damage against Whittaker, why not consider that as an option? I don't think it's more out of the realm of possibility than like a Khalil Roundtree. It's something similar to that kind of. So I think if they want to get a belt around his waist, like before the end of 2025, he needs to go 205. But if not, and I'm kind of hoping not, they keep him at 185, let him fight the winner of DDP, Sean, and I'm assuming and knew he will become your champion.
Yeah, and let's move on to Magomed Ankalaev.
Let's do it.
Looked good against Alexander Rakic. Alexander Rakic had his moments early on with the leg kicks. You know, Rakic is no easy opponent for anyone, including Magomed Ankalaev. Magomed showed us a lot of poise on the feet. He showed us that he's very, I think it was John Anik that said, it was either John Anik or DC, I can't remember. One of the two said that Magomed has such great eyes, meaning that he can stay right in pocket, almost similar to an Ilia Topuria, and slip shots in return. He's right there to be hit, but he's very elusive at the same time, and he'll slip, and then he'll make you pay with a couple strikes of his own. And he got this fight won tonight, but with his striking. We know Magomed is a great grappler, and maybe in some odd way he was trying to send his message to the UFC and to Alex Pereira that, hey, I don't need to take you down to beat you. I can beat you standing. Yeah. Now, he did get hit a few times in the fight. Not many that were that clean or that dangerous or could have ended the fight, but Alexander Rakic is not Alex Pereira as far as power is concerned. So would he maintain that sort of game plan and mentality where he's going to stay on the feet and try to beat Alex Pereira in a stand-up fight when he probably feels clearly that he has an advantage on the ground? I don't know. Probably not.
Right.
But I think the performance tonight was only missing the finish.
Yeah.
Because it was a really good performance. I mean, he looked good in there against a very tough opponent, top 5 guy in the world. And he got his hand raised, and he won in a not, overwhelmingly decisive fashion, but he clearly was a unanimous decision victory. Was that enough to have the UFC give him the next shot? Probably so. I think he would have cemented it with a finish.
Oh, 100%. If he would have gone out there and finished Rakic, because Rakic is a huge 205er, and until he started, falling on hard times with injuries and a couple of losses, he was really humming towards the title shots, and people are like, dude, this Rakic guy, he's legit. I still think he's legit. He looked really good, but he fought the wrong fight against Ankalaev. He let Ankalaev pressure him the whole time, and he didn't show any sort of power strikes or any sort of pressure in return to Ankalaev to push Ankalaev back. And I think, it's a fact. If you're punching moving backwards, you're not hitting as hard as if you're punching moving forward. Ankalaev was landing the more powerful, devastating shots because he was the one bringing the pressure moving forward. And Rakic, he looks like he's light on his feet, moves well, but he wasn't doing enough with all that movement. And eventually, you just start getting trapped up against the cage because you're trying to use so much of the perimeter that you wind up getting stuck in these situations. And that's where Ankalaev was able to find some of that good boxing. Nothing's going to blow your hair back. You said he's got similar eyes and defense to Topuria. Yes, technically they're on 2 different planets. Topuria is so, all smaller fighters are so high level with their technique. The bigger guys don't have to worry so much about that because they have the great equalizer and power. But you're right. He's got great eyes. He's got great defense. He didn't take a whole lot of devastating shots from Rakic. And when he got inside and was able to implement his striking, he found a lot of success. So I think Ankalaev is obviously a big problem, and I think you would see a completely different Ankalaev if he fought Alex Pereira. I think he'd pull some grappling right out of his back pocket if he fought Alex Pereira. But when you're fighting a guy like Rakic and you don't think you have to take it to the ground because, like we were saying before this fight, even though Rakic on paper is probably a better striker, quote unquote, Ankalaev has the ability to take the fight to the ground, and the threat of the takedown is just as important as the takedown itself. I think Rakic was afraid that he would wind up on the canvas if he risked it too much with some of his offense, and that's why he became gun-shy. Ankalaev just walked right through all that, and as soon as Rakic showed that he wasn't really pressing much offense or really trying to bring the fight to Ankalaev, that's when he lost all respect for Rakic and just started walking him down, and that's where he found his most success. So, yeah, Ankalaev deserves the next title fight. I believe it will be next. Hopefully we get a quick turnaround. I don't think he took too much damage, and Chama wants to fight before the end of the year. Probably won't happen in December, but crazier things have happened, and even if it doesn't happen then, I think early spring.
I like it in March. Yeah, I think Alex said that he can fight in December, but preferably he'd like to come back in March.
Give him a little break.
Yeah, make that fight in March. I think it'd be a good one, and I think Ankalaev should get the next title shot. He's done enough heavy lifting. He's fought the top 5 guys. He's defeated them. He deserves to have his day in the sun, and let's see if he can become the new champion. Want to move on now to Dan Ige versus Lerone Murphy.
Oh, yeah.
I had Dan Ige winning this fight. I thought he won 2 rounds to 1. Interesting fight. Murphy certainly had the second round, but I think 1 and 3 definitely went to Dan Ige. 100%. We had some good top pressure grappling. We had some good striking. We had some power punches and stuff like that were landed by Ige. I thought he did more damage throughout the entirety of the fight. I had him winning. I actually predicted split decision, funny enough.
Yeah.
But I predicted I predicted Murphy to win. So actually, what I predicted was right, but it shouldn't have been. It should have been Dan 50K Ige.
Yeah.
You saw it the same way you thought that Ige should have won?
Yeah, and I thought it was pretty clear. Lerone won the second round, no doubt. And he did that by utilizing good range. He was able to fight at a slower pace. Dan Ige did bring a lot of pressure and energy in that first round, and that's why it was a clear-cut first for Ige. He came out there immediately showing us he's a couple inches shorter and doesn't have the range that Lerone has, but that didn't matter because he was bobbing and weaving, getting inside, using good footwork, and landing some big shots, great takedowns. Everything he did in the first round was really, really good, but I think it gassed him a little bit for the second round. It was a smart veteran move, though, to kind of concede round 2 and then come out looking for a round 3 similar to your round 1. And the only issue with the round 3 for Lerone Murphy, in my opinion, what lost him this fight was the massive error that he shot for a takedown. He should not have shot for a takedown because Dan was a better scrambler. Lerone Murphy is one of the cleanest, crispest strikers in that division right now, but Dan Ige is a dog. And if you let him just break you down and turn it into a dogfight and close distance and take you down whenever he wants to, now you're going to have to deal with a full gamut of mixed martial arts, not just a technical kickboxing bout. And that was the mistake that Lerone made, because in the third round, I think if he would have gone back to round 2's tactics of slow the fight down, keep him at range, keep it long, and just score, he would have won 2 rounds to 1. But Ige quickly scrambled on the shot, reversed it, got to his back, was able to control him for somewhere around 2 minutes on the ground. And then there wasn't a whole lot that happened in the final seconds of the fight. I know there was a couple of barrages and exchanges that were exciting, but not a whole lot on the scorecard happened after the ground stuff took place, which took up a bulk of the round. So I had it very clearly 2 rounds for Ige, 1 for Lerone. I picked Lerone to win by decision, I believe, or maybe finish, but I picked Lerone. I was wrong. I was right, but I feel like I was wrong.
Yeah, it's funny because you mentioned that's what lost Lerone the fight, but he actually did win.
Right.
But it felt to me like Dan Ige should have gotten that victory. It felt like 1-3 clearly. One that didn't need the judges' scorecard. Sharabutdin Magomedov. The double spinning back fist, the 11th spinning back fist finish in UFC history.
And he's claiming that one is his. That is his signature move now, the double.
And to my knowledge, the only double out of those 11 that has ever landed and scored a knockout in the UFC. A lot of kicks early from both guys. Really fast, really good kicks. Shara is very durable. He got hit with some big shots early on. Yeah. He weathered it well. He's very fast. He moves in and out well. Mm-hmm. He's got a great check hook. He's got a lot of exciting things that are in his favor as he's becoming a household name. Yeah. He certainly has the look, and he certainly has the fighting style. Now he's finished a really good opponent by devastating knockout. He definitely needs to improve on his head movement a little bit. He gets hit, quite often. If he can improve on that and just continue to work on his grappling, he's from Dagestan, so certainly there's no shortage of folks that he could find to help him in that department. This kid could be somebody that does something over the next 2 to 3 years.
100%. And I think the path that they've got him on right now is perfect. Give him a couple more unranked guys and then start to bring him into some ranked opponents. But for right now, he's getting his feet wet in the UFC. I understand that his grappling isn't up to snuff. He's not a Bo Nickel or a Khamzat Chimaev right now. And he never will be, but his striking is very good. And we saw Israel Adesanya in the same weight class have a lot of success. Alex Pereira, they weren't known as grapplers, but they were able to anti-grapple, anti-wrestling, and keep the fight on their feet. That they both wound up getting the title because of that fighting style. Sharabutdin's got a similar fighting style. Is it just me, or does he look like he really wants to hurt you every time he throws a kick? It could be a little calf kick or a kick to the thigh, and he looks like he's really trying to put, like Khalil Roundtree. He really puts it on you. I think that's a lot of fun. I think when he throws with devastating power, and he really does look to finish the fight. He's going to become a fan favorite very quickly. The UFC's got to love a guy like that that's got the look. He knows how to entertain the crowd. He's got a fun style. People really seem to enjoy the experience of seeing Sharabutdin, this undefeated guy that nobody really knew anything about, come into the UFC, and now he's having some success. He says he's the best striker in the division. That is still to be determined. I think he's got some heavy lifting to do before he starts doing that and considering himself in the leagues of an Alex Pereira or an Israel Adesanya. But what he showed was very promising. And I will say, I'm giving him the signature double spinning back fist because that was really cool. And it did look calculated.
Yeah.
That was not just a Hail Mary throw. He threw that. It looked like he was kind of setting it up early in the fight with some of those Thai steps. He would step and shovel the back leg forward while he lifted the front leg. And it's a show to either show you that I might kick high, I might kick low, or I might just step in and throw a strike. And what he did on that situation was he stepped in like that and stepped on the outside, beyond the outside foot of Petrosyan, which caused the spinning back fist. That was what set him up. But Petrosyan had good defense, blocked it, but Sharabutdin knew that this hand was looking to return, and it was down. And man, his eyes, if you watch him the whole time, his eyes are on the target. Even when he's spinning around, he's quickly turning his head just to find that target. It was brilliant. And I will say, it's his signature move. If this guy wants to steal it from him, he can. But there's a guy named Mauricio Rufi. He's fighting in the UFC now. He's very good, and he's kind of a viral sensation right now as far as striking goes. Very cool in the gym sparring that he's doing, where he's landing some shots like that. I'm pretty sure I saw him land that exact same combination once, but he didn't do it in the UFC. 308 Abu Dhabi. Sharabutdin now owns that move until further notice.
Yeah, and it's funny you said he has great eyes as well. I'll correct you. He has a great eye.
Yeah, right.
Which is even more impressive because the guy literally only has one eye to work with.
Crazy.
And he's able to stay right in range and get his range, not get hit, all that. I mean, he definitely does need to work on the head movement a little bit.
He gets tall too.
Yeah, he does stand up a little tall, but very, very impressive performance all around. The finish was spectacular. All in all, UFC 308 absolutely delivered. Do you have anything else you want to add? What was your fight of the night?
Fight of the night, as Dan Ige and Lerone looked like they were going to do it, and you were kind of calling that could potentially be the one. Max Holloway and Ilia, if it would have been a little bit more competitive, I think it had all the makings, but I don't know. I mean, Sharabutdin and Petrosyan really did kind of throw down. It was evenly matched throughout. So if I got to go with one, that's tough. I'm gonna go Sharabutdin. I think he sealed it up with a great finish, but the fight was competitive, and I believe he will probably leave with 50K. But Petrosyan deserves a little bit extra too, because that was a good fight, and it takes two to tango.
Yeah, I would agree. That was a really excellent fight. Definitely high up there, certainly on the main card, at least for fight of the night.
Yeah, and I can't wait to see where all these guys wind up next. I know we're going to do a lot of shuffling, and there's a couple people that are just going to have to wait around and see what happens in their division. But I think we got some answers. I think we got a whole lot of new stuff in a couple of divisions that kind of needed a little bit of juice. So the sky's the limit for the UFC. 145 looks great, and still Topuria. We got a couple of really hot prospects that delivered. So all in all, great card.
Absolutely. Guys, thanks so much for watching this episode of the Barnhill Brothers. If you're into MMA, we put videos out every single week. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment. Let us know what your fight of the night was. We'll see you in the next one.
Peace.